You're watching NDTV. I'm Gargi Rawat. On the Great Climate Change Challenge, we've been focusing on clean energy and a more sustainable future for the country. Today, we're going to talk about green transportation, the need for a big shift in the sector, and already how much change has taken place. The transport sector in India is the third largest emitter of CO2. Add to that rising oil prices and a rapidly increasing climate-conscious consumers. The central government is encouraging businesses and consumers to adopt EVs as fast as possible, which is still at a very nascent stage. But the good news is, according to the Federation of Automobile Dealers Association, EV sales have spiked in the first 2 months of 2022, surpassing the 1 lakh mark. In some states like Assam, Goa and Gujarat, where there are much larger incentives for adopting green mobility, has seen their growth expand 20 times. Markets are primarily led by two-wheelers and three-wheelers like e-rickshaws. So what will green mobility look like in India? What policies and incentives are driving the sector? Will they be enough? And are we looking at the best use cases and narratives across all states and sectors? Also, what are we not doing? These are some of the questions which we'll try and answer in this episode. Joining us to answer these questions, we have Vivek Kumar Devangan, Chairman and Managing Director, REC Limited. Thank you for joining us. Amit Bhatt, Managing Director, the International Council on Clean Transportation India. And Anmol Jaggi, co-founder at Blue Smart Electric Mobility and also founder at Gensel Renewable Energy Group. Thank you so much for joining us on the show to talk about this. Mr. Devangan, first to you, if you could tell us about the trends. There's been 150% increase in the EV space, and if you could tell us a bit more about that, it's looking very positive.
India is one of the few G20 countries which has been able to meet its commitment made in COP21 at Paris in 2015. We had committed that we'll bring down our emission intensity of GDP by about 33% by the year 2030 as compared to 2005 level. But we already achieved that in the year 2022. That's why Government of India has enhanced its ambition to reduce the emission intensity of GDP by about 40 to 45% by the year 2030. In this decarbonization initiative, Government of India has also declared that we'll reduce our carbon emission by 1 billion ton in the next 7 years by the year 2030. As a part of this decarbonization drive, this electric mobility is a very significant component, and it is going to play a big role because more than 80% of our crude oil is being imported.
Yes.
In order to become self-sufficient, electric vehicle is going to play a very significant role. In REC, we have prepared our business strategy. Our renewable energy portfolio is about 30,000 crore as of now. We intend to increase our renewable energy portfolio by about 10 times, say about 3 lakh crore by the year 2030, in which we are covering the entire spectrum of electric mobility as well. Not only the electric vehicles, but also the charging infrastructure. We are committed to play a significant role in the energy transition of the country.
All right, a much needed transition. Amit Bhatt, what do you see, your comments on this sector and the challenges that you see currently?
No, I think absolutely. If you look at our commitment, apart from the Paris commitment, the Honorable Prime Minister said that we will be net zero by 2070. And that's a pretty ambitious task.
Right. And it's also so interesting to see at the time the Paris Agreement was made and the kind of leaps and bounds development we've seen in the space of green energy, wind, power, solar.
Absolutely. And so the question that we posed ourselves, that if India has to achieve this net zero by 2070, what does it mean for the transport sector, since we work in the transport space? And we concluded, and this report will come out very soon, maximum by 2045, India's entire automobile sector has to become zero tailpipe emission.
Really?
Zero tailpipe emission. And we are really looking at, so the question is,
but do you see that actually happening?
Absolutely. So we looked at what technologies will deliver, right? And we came to the conclusion there are two technologies that will deliver. One is battery electric, the other is the hydrogen fuel cell. Only these two technologies can deliver. The question is, are we on the right path? Absolutely. But what do we need to do? Because this is a very ambitious target. And I think we have started a journey, we are in the right direction, but the big question for us is, how do you scale up? Because if you look at two-wheeler, three-wheeler, very powerful story on electrification. Buses, absolutely coming on. But 50% of the transport CO2 emission comes from trucks, medium, light duty and heavy duty. That's a big missing piece that we have to start very soon.
And it always boils down to the economics. I mean, we can all talk about going green and green energy, but if it doesn't make economic sense for the common man, they're not going to make that shift, because let's face it, we're a developing nation. Even 10 rupees here and there, 100 rupees makes a big difference. So that, you say, is where the big push is. In two-wheeler, three-wheeler space, it's looking very good, but now we need to focus on these areas.
The economics, we have to look at from two perspectives. One is the high upfront cost, which is still an issue with electric vehicles. But we now know in certain use cases, the life cycle cost or the total cost of ownership is cheaper than the internal combustion engine vehicle. The economics are all for electric vehicle as of now. But as we move forward, as demand increases, as renewable increases, we will not only see the cost coming down, we will also see the environmental impact also improving of these electric vehicles.
Which is much needed given the kind of pollution we have in our cities. So, Anmol Jaggi, your comments on this. What more do you think the government needs to do to, give a big push to electronic vehicles?
I think first of all, we'll have to thank the government. There has already been a lot of push. GST on electric vehicles from many years is now 5%, which is the cheapest form of GST that we can have. I think the one or two places where we really need the government to step up, especially on the charging infrastructure side, is GST on charging is still at 18%. I don't understand. Vehicles is at 5%, but why on charging it is 18%? I think that can easily go down to 5%. The other thing is setting aside enough land for setting up charging infrastructure. Today also, for the growth of Blue Smart, which is an all-electric cab service, the biggest impediment is just the lack of charging infrastructure. Although we are building a lot by ourselves, but we would request if government could allocate, instruct municipal corporations, etc., to carve out some specific zones specifically for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. I think that will go a long way in boosting the mental confidence of every user, not just cab service providers, but every user, that there is a charger close by and you should go and charge your vehicle there.
So clearly, Mr. Devangan, this needs a lot of, you're the only representative, from the government as such. So this needs a lot of coordination, at not just the central level pushing down, but at the states, at the city level as well, and to get more consumers on board and create awareness and of course making it easier. They shouldn't feel it'll be a challenge. They may buy the vehicle, but it'll be a challenge for them to charge it.
The government of India had brought this faster adoption and manufacturing of electric and hybrid vehicle, Phase 1 and Phase 2.
Yes.
That is improving the entire ecosystem for the charging infrastructure. It is like chicken and egg story, because sufficient number of electric vehicles are not there, the charging infrastructure is not financially viable in the initial year. That's why government of India came with the subsidy varying from 50% to 70% up to 100% also. So now lot of charging stations are coming up for two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Domestic charging has also been provided. The tariff rationalization is taking place. And in fact, a number of states have brought their own electric vehicle policy. They are giving a lot of policy push towards electric vehicle adoption.
And some states are doing much better than others. If you could tell us a bit about that.
Yes, some states are definitely doing much better, like Haryana, Delhi, some of the southern states, Karnataka. They come up with very active electric vehicle policies. The main challenge, as told by Mr. Anmol, is that land for a charging station. The state governments and the land owning agency have to play an active role. For that, Ministry of Power has suggested that they can perhaps evolve a revenue sharing model for facilitating the land for the charging infrastructure, because in the urban areas, particularly metropolitan cities, the cost of land is quite high. Perhaps a revenue sharing model could be adopted wherein it could be a win-win situation for both the consumer as well as for the land-owning agencies.
This needs a government body, overall to push this, like we saw with the Delhi Metro, for example. We saw that massive push, land was taken, it was done. So something similar on that. But also, Amit Bhatt, if you could tell us about this whole recycling of batteries and, the talk of, there's a lot of talk by, environmentalists and those pushing for green energy, and a lot of people are concerned about how to, recycle these batteries and the fact that we also import so much for the EV space.
No, absolutely. And I think what we have to realize is that right now, if you are making a comparison between an electric vehicle and internal combustion engine vehicle, we have to make an apples to apples comparison. We can't make an apples to orange comparison. I'll tell you why.
Sure.
One is we have to understand real emission that comes from the internal combustion engine. The real world emission from internal combustion engine is almost 10 to 15 times more than the PUC limits. Because when you're doing a PUC test, the engine is stationary, the vehicle is stationary, there's no one sitting, you are not driving, right? So you are not capturing the real world emission, but the vehicles are running in our cities. Second, two most important criteria pollutants that Delhi will speak for next 3-4 months, PM and NOx emission.
Yes.
These two emission criteria pollutants we don't capture in PUC test. So while Delhi talks about particulate matter emission, but here in the vehicles we are not capturing particulate matter emission. And when you have an electric vehicle, you have zero tailpipe emission. So that's one. Second is definitely, I think as we scale up the electric vehicle deployments, we have to be energy security, we have to look at industrial competitiveness and other factors. And that is why we also have to look at how do we source the critical materials that will go in for batteries. I think Government of India's PLI scheme for encouraging cell manufacturing is a fantastic step. Because at the heart of the electric vehicle is the battery, and the heart of the vehicle is the cell. Once we start manufacturing the cell in India, we will see not only cost coming down, but a much more rampant increase in the adoption of electric vehicles.
With that, we'll just slip into a short break now, and coming up on the other side, we're going to discuss more about the challenges that is being faced as we shift to electronic vehicles and in this particular sector. Do stay with us. Welcome back to our special show as part of the Climate Change Challenge. And on this show, we're talking about clean energy and moving to a sustainable future when we talk especially about green transportation. That's the focus of our show here. Anmol Jaggi, I'd like to go to you now to talk more about what can the private sector do in this space, what more needs to be done, what role can startups play, what more do you want to see from the government, especially when it comes to public-private partnership?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, the government has done quite a lot. There are only some minor things that they need to do. It's all about the young startups and the corporate India to now pick up the mantle. We have the famed subsidy which is there, which subsidizes up to, in a four-wheeler, up to 2 lakh rupees a car, which is substantial. GST is low. Now it's all about, instead of talking more, let's act more. And I think a lot of people have started to do it, a lot of corporates have started to do it, but clearly the demand needs to pick up for electric vehicles because like sir was mentioning, there is this chicken and egg problem which is there. But I think some of us have already started to do it, and I think we are also leading by example, and courtesy the proliferation of electric vehicles that we have been trying to demonstrate, a lot more people are getting more and more excited about buying an electric vehicle. So just in case in point, about 40,000-50,000 users use our service every day. They speak to the driver partners tell them the issues and the good points about electric mobility, which translates into sales at dealerships. We are at about 2% penetration on the car side, on the four-wheel car side, but I think we will easily surpass the 10% mark in the next 3 years. Progress is being made. Can it be accelerated? Yes.
And to get more consumers on board, we did speak about the challenges that, the uncertainty about charging stations, but also in terms of, better sort of loans, the conditions for those loans so that more and more people will come in and incentivizing it for the consumer.
Yeah, I think 4 years back when we started Blue, it was very difficult to get debt. But again, today it's become relatively more easier, and I have to put it on record. We have had multiple PSU financiers who have financed us a lot. Power Finance Corporation gave us 630 crores. So it's a lot of money that state lenders have given to us to ramp up electric mobility. So I'm extremely thankful and delighted for it. But we are also seeing on the consumer side today, whether it is the HDFC Bank or the Axis or other banks, they are pretty much very, very comfortable in lending to EV sector. So from that perspective, I think it's already there. Anybody who is genuinely wants to buy an EV car cannot say that I did not have financing towards it. There is enough financing which is available today.
Okay, so that's great to hear, and that's one way to push, consumers. But Amit Bhatt, also let's talk about, clean biofuels and the shift there. That's also been a big talking point, especially when we talk about, green mobility and making this transport sector greener.
No, absolutely. And I think so the research that we did was, we looked at all possible fuel types, right from petrol, diesel, CNG, we looked at biofuels, battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell.
Yes.
And we came to a conclusion that only 2 technologies, as I said earlier, will deliver on climate goals. But these technologies will not come tomorrow or next year. It will take time, maybe 10, 15, 20 years. Till then, you will have some transitional fuels. So biogas, these are good transitional fuels. So you can use them, but ultimately we'll have to shift to electric or hydrogen fuel cell as the two technologies. Now the question is, what do we do to scale up? I think that's very important. So we have done phenomenally well to reach at this level, but we have to scale it up from climate perspective. So financial subsidies like FAME and state policies are good to start initial demand, but you don't have enough money to subsidize all the possible cars and two-wheelers in India. So three things that we can do. One, Europe and US has done a lot of work on fuel economy standards. So you tighten fuel efficiency standards so that it becomes much more viable for OEMs to shift to electric. So that's one strategy. Second is California started something called a ZEV mandate, where they made all the OEMs to have a certain percent of fleet as electric. So what it does, because they have to sell a certain percentage of fleet as electric, they bring down the cost of these vehicles and increase marginally the other cost, so the sales become happen. And third, we also have to start looking at zero emission zones in India. Cities where only zero emission vehicles are allowed, like electric. So if we start working on these three things, I think the scale up will be much more faster.
Well, I wish we could have that here in Delhi, where we have this constant, air pollution problem. But again, it comes down to the economics and the final, users. But Mr. Devangan, coming to the end of this show, so what do you see going forward, in this landscape as we're, changing and evolving towards the EV space? What are the big milestones now to watch out for? And clearly, we've spoken about how there needs to be a bigger push, and we've already made amazing, achievements in this space, but a lot more can be done.
I'd like to highlight 3 points. One is that India is member of Clean Energy Ministerial, which is a global conglomerate of agencies and countries, which has committed for EV 30 at the rate of 30. All the new vehicle registration, 30% of the new vehicles by the year 2030 will come from electric vehicle segment. Second is technological challenge that we need to overcome. The commercial viability of like hydrogen fuel cell, because it is very difficult to store and transport hydrogen. Big vehicles like truck, etc. If we have to convert them into hydrogen run trucks and buses, we need to have proper safety technology in place, and commercial viability of this technology will have to be done. And third is cost of this technology, cost of this equipment needs to be brought down, and the cost of financing of this vehicle also has to be worked out so that it becomes, people are incentivized to use these electric vehicles.
All right. So final word to you, Mr. Jaggi. So as you already said, government is doing a lot, and technology really needs to be where the push is now to, and upscale things so that it becomes even more economically feasible.
I think technology has already played its part again, and a lot to do. But when we started Blue, we were at 110 kilometer car, which was costing 14 lakh rupees. Today we have a 12 lakh rupee car which is giving 220 kilometers. So the cost has fallen by 10-15% and the range has doubled. Basically, any new energy technology, whether it was solar earlier or today electric mobility, is on the falling cost curve, and is on the increasing efficiency curve, which is going to happen. So is it a possibility that you will have a 7 lakh rupee car which gives you a 300 kilometer range? I would put my money that in 3 years you will have it.
Well, that's a very optimistic note to end this show on. Thank you so much all for joining us and talking about the future of green mobility in India, and how much has been achieved and how much still needs to be achieved. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for watching at home. Goodbye.